Hello everybody, it's the, well, what is it? It's the 26th of March today, and out for a walk with Cooper. We found this very interesting piece of stick which he was very disappointed that wasn't donated straight to the cause of doggy joy, but has instead been relegated to the SIDS joy. And today I'm going to use this piece of wood to start a new fusion project using some pieces of Virginia creeper, which I have here in this jumbled mess, this pot. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of Virginia creeper that I've layered into this pot. It's not really going to be enough to cover this, well, let's call it what it's going to be, trunk. Initially it's going to have to grow and thicken, but cover it will eventually. First thing I'm going to want to do is get these out of this pot. Let's see if I can't get rid of this cane. I might need to cut these pieces of string that are holding it up, and of course they all fall down. As you can see, some pieces are particularly long, and we'll get to the end of that, let's call it a trunk, and some bits are a bit shorter, but that's okay because they'll all fatten up eventually. It might even help with an illusion of taper at some point. So let's get these out of the pot and clean up the roots. I'll pull that weed out for starters, and try and get these out in one go. They're in a combination of mostly just compost and a little bit of bonsai soil, but we'll just clean them up as best we can. Okay, so I can pull these apart now. You can see on each individual one where the original shoot was just placed into the ground and rooted. I'm going to try and save as much absolute maximum root as I can, just to power this initial growth and fusion. We'll worry about getting them into a slender, slimmer pot at a future date. Initially they're going to go back into the large plant pot. There's that old root cutter. So where there's root, I'm going to keep it if I can. I'm going to shorten that piece off. Having said that, that's one more. My understanding is that that won't really grow, this piece anyway, because it's sort of backwards from the root, if that makes sense. So there, so that's cleaned up all of those, and now I've just got to figure out a way of attaching all of this to the trunk. So this was how this particular branch would have been attached to the tree, and I'm looking at this as being a possible front, but I guess for now I'm going to be putting it into a round flower pot, front schmunt. I'm going to try and attach them here at the base. Use this piece as a kind of help stand it up in the ground I know it'll rot eventually, but it will help it stand up until the roots will support it, if that makes sense. So let's just try and get on with that. Sitting here in this bucket of water so I can try and keep the roots moist while we do this. Whilst there, I can show you that the buds are beginning to burst. So now is an excellent time to do this piece of work, and the trees will get off hopefully to a flying start and begin to swell and thicken and repair themselves and fuse themselves as they go. I tried to root more, but as I've only got 6 rooted, 6 is what I'm going to go with. Maybe in future years I can root more and add more, but they're obviously going to be quite a while before they're going to fully surround and infuse this particular stick. But that's okay. It's a very fast growing shrub, climber, not a shrub, it's a climber, it's a type of vine. So what I'm trying to do now is wind it round itself if I can, and I've missed a piece of string. What I'm trying to do is kind of wind it around itself as well. Give them a bit of spacing around the trunk, and if I can just get this lot wired into place, spaced around, then I can worry about filling gaps and things later. Okay, so another one of those jobs, and I know I'm repeating myself. If you're new here, you won't know that, but I do repeat myself from time to time. But it's another one of those jobs for which a third hand would be astonishingly useful. Okay, so now I've got them all much of a muchness in terms of a placement around. It doesn't matter that some of them are crossing one another, because that'll just speed up some of the fusion process. This is going to take a long time to fuse, I know it. But c'est la vie. A few more pieces would have speeded things up considerable. Okay, so piece of wire, and it's a thickish wire because it will cut in, and the thinner the wire, the more it cuts in, rather like the sharp blade on a guillotine. I'd rather it didn't cut them clean through, but just held them in place. And as I say, I'm trying to space them a little bit evenly round. Not easy, but that way each one can grow some and fill up some of the space. Okay. There, we have something whereby we have trunks wrapped around the base of the wood, which is, well, it's a start. It's a long way off a fused project, but a start is a start is a start. In lieu of one of those extra hands I mentioned, I'm just going to use a little piece of string just to tie these up here whilst I try and plant it into the ground, or well, plant it into the pot rather. And get the roots back in the soil where they won't dry out whilst I fiddle and fuss with the top. Okay, so there we have a long way to go. There we have a something and a nothing and a maybe. Something promising, perhaps. Okay, so I have a large conventional flower pot, a lot of drainage in the bottom. So what I'm going to do to stop the bonsai mix coming out and down and through and straight out to the holes in the bottom, there's an old trick I often use, which is some paper, newspaper, whatever you might have. I'm using some old printer paper because I don't read newspapers. And there may be a little bit of bleach in this paper, but I don't think 4 sheets is going to cause a huge amount of trouble. But that will just fill in those holes and stop the soil mix falling out of the bottom. And by the time, hopefully, by the time it's rotted away, the roots will be holding the soil together. It'll be on the ground, not being moved about. And at the same time, it won't impede drainage in the slightest. So I'm going to fill it up about a third full. And then I'm going to add some continuous release. Not continuous release, I've done it again. Some controlled release fertilizer. A little more. As I say, we're going to get some depth into this root ball eventually, but that can be reduced. And if I want to fuel a lot of growth this next few years, then it is going to have to be given a good root run. Okay, so I'm going to plant this in, like so. Get all those roots in and get it filled up with soil. Again, this is where I need a third hand. Okay, so it was very much threatening to tip over, so I've put a cane back in at the back and tied it off near the top there, just to hold the whole thing upright. And as I say, once the roots get out and spread out and do their thing, then it will hold itself up. I'm going to put some more controlled release fertilizer around the top. And a little bit more soil on top of that. And then we'll give it a drink. Okay, so as to try and speed this video up for you a little bit, I've basically pulled in all the pieces around and trying to get them, well, they're not evenly spaced as much as I would have liked, and I would have liked more vines in the first place, but only the ones that rooted and can't be helped. I've already tied these in. Obviously they're going to have to thicken up a lot to fuse and cover that whole area, but I know they're capable of that, so it's just a question of hopefully when rather than if. So, and I put a second piece of wire further up along the trunk, and now we can just keep trying to wrap them around these bends, hopefully without snapping anymore. I've already snapped one, but we shall keep going. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. We're up to the first curve. As I say, it's still going to be a while before these can properly fuse and cover this wood insert, but they will, and gradually new shoots will emerge from the trunks, and they also will begin to fatten and fuse. Sorry, I've lost you on the screen then. Just kind of working my way up with this piece, like so. Just going to try and wrap any old bit of wire around at the moment, just to hold that in place. Stop it unwinding. And this piece I'm going to tuck under. I can do it without damaging it. There we go. I'm not sure this piece is going to... No, it's bent. Okay, so will it stay bent? We shall see. A bit of string on that one. Okay, and then this one, I'll wind around the other way, and it will hopefully fuse in like a wicker basket. I'm using string at this top end because these are much thinner pieces and I don't want the wire to cut in too much, and I can control the pressure a bit easier with the string, but I will need to keep an eye on it in case it rots. As I say, very ambitious, but I hope it'll do something interesting. I'm going to cut that end off at a bud there. Hopefully these shoots will burst all over, and I'll have lots of new shoots to tie in. We shall see. Okay, so part of me is now wondering whether I wouldn't have been better cutting them off quite short and getting lots of new shoots that I could then tie in, but we won't know that because I haven't done that. That's not to say that if this year turns out to be a dismal failure, I couldn't cut my losses and cut it back anyway. So subscribe if you're interested in seeing where this strange looking beastie is going, or to see my other trees which aren't as strange or as weird, I promise. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Do the YouTube usual things, the liking, the subscribing, commenting. Tell me if you think I'm being a complete wazzock with this, or whether you think I might have done something better. But most of all, please, please, please do take care of yourselves. Stay safe, everybody.